America's forests and grasslands matter deeply to people, communities, and whole sectors of society. They also provide so much of what our country needs to thrive. They will last for the long term if we take care of them together. That's why the public land management agencies were created so many generations ago, to steward these lands to benefit not just the current generation, but also generations to come. We've all been working for a very long time to build the trail for lasting conservation success, with each of us building on the work of those who came before.
I'm Dale Robertson. I was served as the Forest Service Chief from 1987 to 1993, going back to the Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush's administration.
My name is Mike Dombeck. I served as Forest Service Chief under the second 4 years of the Clinton administration from 1997 to 2001.
My name is Dale Bosworth, and I was Chief of the Forest Service during the George W. Bush administration from 2001 to 2007.
Hi, my name is Gail Kimball, and I served as the 16th Chief of the Forest Service from 2007 to 2009. I served under Presidents George W. Bush and under President Barack Obama.
My name is Tom Tidwell, and I served as the Forest Service Chief from 2009 to 2017 under Presidents Barack Obama and Donald Trump.
My name is Vicki Christensen, and I served as a Forest Service Chief from 2018 until 2021 under Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Hi, I'm Randy Moore, and I served as Chief of the USDA Forest Service from 2021 to 2025 under both the Biden and the Trump administrations.
I inherited a Forest Service in 1987 that was producing 12 billion board feet of timber a year and doing a lot of clear cutting. Timber sale work, along with related work like road construction and reforestation, was a huge portion of the total Forest Service budget and staffing. Then we discovered the spotted owl in the Northwest, and we had other issues as well, and together they knocked in the head the timber sale program, and at the end of my tenure we were down to about 4 billion board feet, a 2/3 reduction. Obviously this set into motion rapid change. It also created ideal conditions for innovation, creativity, pursuing new ideas about the Forest Service and its future. We started to take a hard look at how we manage the national forest and came up with something called New Perspectives. Eventually, New Perspectives evolved into a new ecosystem management approach to managing the forest. We introduced the concept of partnerships and as a way to implement the strategy. And by the way, this was an entirely new concept for the federal government. Let me close by talking about workforce diversity and the road the Forest Service has traveled down over time. And during my time as chief, it became obvious that we were in an untenable situation and that the Forest Service needed to provide equal opportunity for all people to work for the Forest Service. Now, a generation later, we have a highly professional, multidisciplinary, and diverse workforce that are ready to face the future, and they need your help.
I followed Jack Ward Thomas, and during Jack's tenure as chief, the first 4 years of the Clinton administration, I was acting director of BLM, and Jack and I spent a lot of time together working on a lot of the same issues. But since Jack is not with us, I just want to say a few words about Jack and all that he did. You know, he was the lead scientist dealing with the spotted owl issue, front and center with President Clinton, Vice President Gore, several cabinet members and agency heads. And the end result of that was the Northwest Forest Plan, which covered 24 million acres of land in the Pacific Northwest, managed both by the Forest Service and BLM. By the time I became chief, the realization that the big timber era was over had settled in the Forest Service. There was a sense of, in a sense, a loss of mission. I thought it important to bring the focus of the agency back to conservation and land management and the mission of the agency. I was worried about who will want us in 20 years and 50 years and why. I began to talk about the importance of water, looking for a constituency and asking who are the real constituencies of the Forest Service. I thought it important to talk about ecosystem services with a focus on water. I mean, after all, everybody needs water every day, and so everybody should care about forests. Those who followed me had to deal with an intensity of fire behavior that was almost unheard of decades before that. Climate change, old growth issues. But the focus of the Forest Service remains forest health, forest ecosystems, and where we need to go in the future to serve the American public.
Caring for our public lands is not a partisan issue. I became chief at the beginning of the Bush administration, and prior to that, I had led the Intermountain region and the Northern region of the Forest Service. We developed what I called the 4 threats to our nation's forests and grasslands, and they were unnatural buildup of fuels and the resulting fires, invasive species, weeds, insects, pathogens, loss of open space, and unmanaged recreation, especially all-terrain vehicles. And part of my job to address these threats was meeting with editorial boards, colleges and universities, and other organizations who would listen and help us address these threats. In 2003, Congress passed the Healthy Forest Restoration Act to deal with the condition of the forests. And the big focus for us was the resulting wildfires, which were getting worse and worse. These efforts didn't solve the problems, but they were a step in the right direction. As I said at the beginning, caring for public lands isn't a partisan issue, but many natural resource challenges persist, and they demand creativity, regardless of which administration is in charge.
As all of us do, I built on the work of the previous chiefs, and most specifically on the work that Dale Bosworth had done in his address to the 4 threats affecting forests. I identified my own 3 emphasis areas to build on that and some other work going on in the Forest Service. The 3 emphasis areas were climate change, connection with children, and water. The first of those, climate change, was building on the work done by Forest Service scientists across the country and in work with other nations and other agencies. The Forest Service scientists who participated in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change shared in the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007, and that was a tremendous thing to be celebrated, and we did. My second emphasis area was children. 80% of our population here in the United States lives in an urban environment. We need those kids to care about natural resources as much as most of us do. A third emphasis area was water. 60% of our drinking water in the United States originates on forest lands. The health of those forests is very important for the quantity and quality of water that we all enjoy as Americans coming out our taps.
Catastrophic fires, rising fire suppression costs, during a time of constrained budgets dominated my time as chief. In order to address these challenges, we reached out to our partners and applied the Forest Service culture of innovation and adaptive leadership. A major effort was the completion of the Cohesive Wildfire Management Strategy, a collaborative between federal, state, and local partners that developed national direction used science and technology to safely and effectively extinguish fire, use fire where allowable, build fire-sustainable communities, and as a nation, to learn to live with fire. We prioritize timber harvest within our forests in the wild and urban interface to significantly reduce fire threat to the community. We use science to explain how climate change was resulting in the hotter, drier, longer fire seasons that people and forests were experiencing. We build on the legacy and value of collaboration, where diverse interests can cooperate, develop solutions. To value our forests and grasslands for the clean air, the clean water, biodiversity, recreational settings, and the economic benefits for current and future generations. We work with Congress to expand the Farm Bill, to promote urban forestry and show how trees improve people's health and reduce infrastructure costs. We strengthen our commitment to diversity and inclusion, to really value diversity of thought, to be an agency where everyone is welcome. We made good progress, but left a great deal of work for the next shift.
I became chief about a year into the Trump administration during a time of deep crisis for the agency. As with my predecessors, managing these public lands is certainly about these amazing landscapes, but it's also about who we are as individuals and as an agency. And we're drawn to a conservation mission. And all of that is okay. In fact, it's valued. When I became chief, we were under intense scrutiny for a culture of sexual harassment. While our workforce had become more diverse, too many still felt a pressure to stay silent, to go along to get along. And to truly serve all Americans, we had to change. We worked hard to build a values-based, purpose-driven, relationship-focused organization. That's why we launched the Shared Stewardship initiative, partnering with states and communities to set priorities across the entire landscape, inclusive of communities. We needed to think bigger, we needed to work across boundaries and use every tool available. And I'm glad to say that work is continuing today. This was also a time where healthy forests were recognized as vital nature-based solutions to climate change, to clean and abundant water, and to sustainable wood products. Conservation financing tools were actually being used, and new markets from mass timber to family forest carbon markets were becoming a reality. And bold partnerships like Forest Proud and the 1 Trillion Tree Initiative were launched and gaining traction. Even when most days felt like a crisis, we proved what was possible when we lead with purpose, partnership, and a shared vision for our forests, for our agency, for our employees, and the communities that we serve.
Under my tenure, we produced 5 strategic initiatives. Number 1 is the wildfire crisis strategy. Number 2 is carbon storage and sequestration standards. Number 3 is wood innovations program. Number 4 was to focus on urban forestry expansion. And number 5 was about partnerships and organizational development. Under the wildfire crisis strategy, we created a unified approach to wildfire response and prevention through a proactive land management, which served as the foundation for all these other initiatives. We advanced standardized calculation methods with partners to support America's carbon accounting needs as we move forward in this critical area. And the third one is the Wood Innovations Program. Under this initiative, we developed markets for small diameter, low value material, which is removed during wildfire prevention treatments. And this includes things like cross-laminated timber, biochar and biofuel, and nanocellulose material. The fourth initiative was about urban forestry expansion, where we extended forest management principles to urban areas. And this allowed us to demonstrate how trees improve citizens' well-being. And then the last initiative was about partnerships and organizational development. We've had as a goal of the last few administrations to increase the diversity of our workforce so that the U.S. Forest Service employees better represent all of America. And under my tenure, we were able to increase representation from 18 to 29%. This is a huge leap that people can see reflected in our workforce, and I'm awfully proud of this.
I really care a lot about the Forest Service, and I feel like I've been involved with the Forest Service my whole life. My dad worked for the Forest Service, and my son works for the Forest Service. And so I feel like I've been a part of that. I learned from my dad, and I also hope that my son learned from me. It's kind of the same way with being chief. I learned from my predecessors, and I hope that my successors learn something from me.
I came to realize what a phenomenal resource we have in the United States with our national forest system. It is, together with the BLM lands, Park Service lands, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service lands, we have a treasure here in the United States that is unparalleled around the world. And we need to take care of it.
You know, in this country, we are so fortunate to have the system of public lands, and especially our national forest and grasslands. It's truly the envy of the world, and all of us should pause once in a while and just reflect on just how lucky we are.
And I reflect back on the first chief of the agency, Gifford Pinchot, and he had made the statement that the Forest Service exists because the people want us to exist. And that still holds true. And if we're going to continue to exist into the future, our communities need to be engaged in their lands.
Over the last 4 decades of our time as chiefs, public land management agencies have changed to respond to the needs of the public and the land. We chose to lift up our collective voice now because we see a critical need and opportunity. We have to embrace strategic change together to ensure our lands continue to provide for the new century. Let's rise to the moment and collectively give all that we have to meet the changing conditions we face, ecologically, economically, and politically. Let's bring together all of those that use, manage, and benefit from forests to ensure a common path to success together. This is our common legacy.